Hey everyone, ready to dive in. Today it's getting personal. We're talking about you, your career, your life, the whole shebang. And to help us cut through the noise, we're cracking open Robert Greene's The Daily Laws.
Yeah, it's like a year's worth of wisdom from his biggest books, all distilled down to these bite-sized nuggets. Greene's all about radical realism, which, let's be honest, is pretty refreshing.
Totally. He's not peddling some fantasy of overnight success or secret shortcuts. In fact, he's upfront about the fact that he had over 60 jobs before finding his own path. 60.
Seriously, 60
Yes.
jobs. I think that's huge because it shows that even someone like Greene, who's now a best-selling author and all, didn't have it all figured out from the get-go.
And that's so reassuring, you know? It's easy to get stuck comparing ourselves to some idealized version of success, but Greene reminds us that it's all about the journey, the stumbles, the learning process.
He calls it unearthing your life's task, which sounds way more exciting than just finding a job, right?
100%. It's like, this isn't some predetermined path you're supposed to follow. It's about uncovering what truly resonates with you. And sometimes it's those early passions, the stuff we loved as kids, that hold the clues.
Right. He talks about V.S. Ramachandran, the neuroscientist, who was obsessed with seashells as a kid, who knew that would lead to groundbreaking discoveries about the brain, right? It's like, don't discount those early fascinations. They might be pointing you towards something big.
Exactly. Okay, so let's say you've tapped into your inner Ramachandran and you have a better sense of what makes you tick. How do you actually master a field and make it your own?
Well, this is where Greene's take on apprenticeships really clicked for me. He reframes the whole thing. Instead of being this tedious thing you got to grind through, it's an adventure, a chance to dive deep into something you're curious about.
Oh, I love that. It's like taking ownership of the learning process, even if it's not always glamorous. It reminds me of that story Greene tells about learning French.
Oh yeah, the whole struggling through college French versus fully immersing himself in it while living in Paris thing. It really highlights the power of motivation, right?
Absolutely. You can have all the talent in the world, but without that fire, that drive to learn and grow, it's not going to get you very far.
And that leads perfectly to finding the right mentor. Greene compares it to choosing the right parents, which sounds kind of strange at first, but it makes sense when you think about it. It's about finding someone who not only knows their stuff, but also gets you, challenges you, and pushes you to grow in a way that feels supportive.
Yeah, it's like that mentor-mentee relationship has to have that spark, that genuine connection. And it's not just about finding someone who's super successful or whatever. Greene talks about V.S. Ramachandran finding his perfect match in this guy, Richard Gregory. It was about their shared intellectual curiosity, their personalities, even their quirks. They just clicked.
Okay, but let's talk about talent for a second. Where does that fit into Greene's vision of mastery? This is where things get interesting, because he kind of debunks this whole myth of the tortured genius, you know, the whole you either have it or you don't thing. Greene is all about discipline and self-control being the keys to achieving true mastery.
So it's not about waiting for a bolt of inspiration. It's about consistently showing up, putting in the reps, and building those habits that lead to greatness. It's about getting gritty.
Totally. And he has this awesome phrase, getting to the inside. It's not just about knowing the facts, but internalizing them, making them a part of who you are so you're not even thinking about it anymore. Think about it in the context of sports, music, anything. Those moments when you're in flow, that's getting to the inside.
And that kind of mastery, that fingertip feel, as he calls it, doesn't happen overnight. It takes dedication and a willingness to put in the work, even when it's hard, even when you'd rather be doing anything else.
Yeah, and it ties back to his whole point about embracing the grind, the apprenticeship phase.
Yeah.
He tells this great anecdote about Toni Morrison, the novelist, writing her first book late at night after working all day and taking care of her kids. Talk about commitment.
It's inspiring, though, isn't it? It shows that you don't need some magical formula for success. It's about making the choice day after day to show up and do the work, even when it's tough.
Now, Greene doesn't just stop at mastering your craft. He delves into this other crucial aspect of navigating the world. Power dynamics.
And I think this is where people get a little uneasy, right? We want to believe that we can just focus on our work and rise above the office politics or social maneuvering. But Greene's saying that's just not realistic.
Right, and he learned that the hard way. Remember Law 1, never outshine the master.
Ooh, yeah. I remember this story, not his finest moment. Tell us what happened.
Well, as Greene tells it, he got a job in publishing, and he came in way too eager, showing off his skills left and right. But instead of being impressed, his boss felt threatened, like Greene was trying to upstage him.
Oof, I bet that stung.
It's a good reminder that even with the best intentions, you got to be mindful of the dynamics at play.
Absolutely. Not everyone is playing by the same rules, even if they act like they are. He even talks about these supposed non-players who are stealthy, operating behind the scenes. You got to be able to spot those types.
So it's not about becoming cynical or paranoid, but about developing that social intelligence, that awareness of the unspoken rules of the game. It's like knowledge is power, but in this case, it's about self-preservation too.
Exactly. It's about protecting yourself, your energy, and your vision. And I think that's a perfect segue into persuasion. Not the manipulative kind, but being able to navigate those relationships skillfully, which Greene is big on. And for Greene, persuasion is all about understanding where the other person is coming from. It's like, what makes them tick? What are their motivations and values? It's about seeing their side of the story.
So it's less about manipulation and more about empathy. Exactly. And Greene uses this in his own writing. It's all about telling stories that resonate with the reader,
Yeah.
making them feel something. It's not just about throwing facts at people. It's about making those connections.
I like that. So how do we actually do that in our own lives? How do we get better at understanding where someone else is coming from?
Well, for starters, it's about truly listening, making people feel heard and valued. Greene talks about Lyndon B. Johnson, who was known for his ability to connect with people on a personal level. He genuinely cared about their lives, and it showed.
It's like those people you meet who just have this knack for making you feel like you're the only person in the room when you're talking to them. It's powerful stuff.
Totally. And that kind of connection, that feeling of being seen and understood, can make all the difference in the world, whether it's in your personal life or your career.
Okay, so we've talked about mastering our craft, navigating power dynamics, and even understanding those sneaky non-players. But Greene doesn't shy away from the messier parts of human nature, does he? He goes deep into this concept of the shadow self, which is basically all the stuff we try to keep hidden, even from ourselves.
Yeah, like those insecurities, those desires, even the stuff we're kind of ashamed of, envy, self-sabotage, the whole 9 yards.
It's like the stuff we don't want to admit to even to ourselves.
Exactly. And Greene's point is that trying to ignore those parts of ourselves usually backfires. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It's going to pop up eventually, and usually at the worst possible moment.
So it's about bringing those shadows into the light, becoming more self-aware, which, let's be real, isn't always fun.
Not always fun, no, but definitely necessary, because you can't heal what you don't acknowledge. And this is where his idea of alive time versus dead time comes into play.
Okay, break that down for me. What's the difference?
It's about being conscious of how you spend your time, your energy. Are you engaging in activities that truly energize you, or are you just going through the motions feeling drained and unfulfilled?
So it's not about becoming some kind of time management robot, but about being more intentional with how we spend those precious hours in the day.
Precisely. And it circles back to finding your life's task. The more you understand your shadow self, the more you can break free from those self-sabotaging patterns that keep you stuck.
I like that. It's about taking control, being the author of your own story, even the messy parts.
And speaking of messy, Greene doesn't shy away from the big one. Mortality. Wait, are you saying we should be thinking about death all the time? Because that sounds a bit morbid, even for this deep dive.
Not dwelling on it, no, but accepting it as a natural part of life. Greene believes that this awareness, rather than being depressing, can actually make you appreciate the preciousness of life even more. Okay, I think I see where you're going with this. It's about living with a sense of urgency, knowing that our time is limited, which might actually motivate us to make bolder choices and not sweat the small stuff. So we've talked about finding our path, mastering our craft, facing those shadows, but how do we actually make it all work? You know, in the real world, it can feel overwhelming.
That's where this fingertip feel thing that Greene is always talking about comes in, right? It's like you've put in the hours, the reps, the deep work, and something clicks. You're not just following the rules anymore, you're feeling your way through it.
Yeah, it's like that moment when something goes from being hard to almost instinctual. Like you're not even thinking about it anymore. You're just in the flow.
Exactly. He gives all these examples. Athletes, musicians, chess players, they talk about getting in the zone. It's like time slows down and they're just reacting intuitively to whatever comes at them.
And what I love about how Greene explains it is it's not some magical talent that you're born with or not. He's adamant that fingertip feel, it's a skill you develop. It's about practice, about truly understanding the fundamentals of your craft.
It's like that radical realism again, right? The more you embrace the nuances, the messiness, the more adaptable you become. You stop being afraid to improvise, to trust your gut.
It's like you're not just following the recipe anymore. You're the chef. You understand how the ingredients work together so you can experiment and create something new.
100%.
Yeah.
And when you reach that level, you start to see things that other people miss. Greene talks about Bobby Fischer, the chess prodigy, right? People said he could visualize the entire chessboard in his mind, every possible move, every consequence.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's like he had this 360-degree vision of the game.
Exactly. That's what Greene's talking about, that strategic thinking, that ability to see beyond the immediate situation. And that's not just for chess, it's for life, you know?
So how do we actually develop that kind of vision? It feels like something you're either born with or not.
Well, Greene would say it starts with that deep immersion in your craft, with mastering those fundamentals. But it's also about stepping back, looking at the bigger picture, asking yourself, okay, what are my long-term goals? What decisions can I make today that will move me closer to where I want to be?
It's like you're playing chess with your own life.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole journey of self-discovery so exciting, right? It's not about following someone else's rules. It's about defining success on your own terms, about becoming the architect of your own life.
And that's what I appreciate most about Robert Greene's work and why we wanted to really dive deep into the daily laws for this episode. It's not about giving you a step-by-step guide to success. It's about empowering you to find your own way.
It's about embracing the messiness, the challenges, the inevitable setbacks, knowing that those are all part of the journey. It's about cultivating that fingertip feel, not just in our work, but in life itself.
This is about showing up every day, ready to learn, to grow, to become a little bit more masterful than we were yesterday. So, to wrap this all up, take what resonates with you from this deep dive from Greene's work. Have those conversations, experiment, and see where it leads you.